Emily Carter believed she had hidden the truth long enough. For months she carried the secret quietly, convincing herself that no one would ever discover what she was protecting. In the crowded streets of Chicago, surrounded by people struggling to survive their own problems, she hoped the truth about her pregnancy could remain invisible. But the moment she walked into the office of Adrian Volkov, that illusion collapsed, because the most dangerous man in the city already knew. The building where the meeting took place stood at the edge of Chicago's financial district. From the outside, it appeared like an ordinary corporate headquarters, its glass exterior reflecting the skyline, and the endless traffic flowing through the streets below. Yet inside, the atmosphere carried a quiet tension that revealed its true purpose. The lobby was silent, except for the faint hum of security scanners positioned near the elevators. Several men in dark suits stood nearby, their posture calm but alert as they watched every person who entered the building. Emily noticed the way their eyes followed her as she approached the reception desk. They already knew who she was. The realization made her chest tighten. She had not come to this place willingly. The meeting had been arranged after weeks of desperate attempts to solve the financial disaster that had destroyed her family. But the truth was simple. The Carter family no longer had the power to negotiate. Emily rode the elevator alone, the quiet movement of machinery echoing softly around her as the numbers above the door climbed toward the top floor. She tried to steady her breathing. The meeting was supposed to be about debt, nothing more. But the secret she carried made every moment feel more dangerous than the last. Only 2 years earlier, Emily Carter had lived a very different life. Her family once owned a small logistics company that operated between Chicago and several Midwestern shipping hubs. The business was not large, but it provided stability. Her father managed contracts with regional warehouses, while her brother Ryan handled transportation schedules. Emily herself helped with the administrative side of the company, organizing shipments and managing financial records. It had been a simple life, but it was enough. Then everything collapsed. A series of failed contracts and rising operating costs pushed the company into financial trouble. Emily's father tried to keep the business alive by taking out loans, hoping that one strong quarter would restore the company's stability. Instead, the debt continued growing. When he died suddenly after a long illness, the responsibility for the company fell entirely on Ryan. Ryan Carter had always been ambitious, too ambitious, determined to save the family business. He began searching for investors willing to provide the capital needed to keep operations running. But legitimate lenders refused. The company's financial records showed too much risk. Eventually, Ryan turned to a different kind of investor, the kind who never asked too many questions, the kind who expected repayment no matter what happened. Ryan borrowed money from people connected to the Volkov organization. At the time, he believed the deal would only be temporary. A few successful contracts would restore the company's profits, and the debt could be repaid quickly. But the contracts failed. The shipments never produced the profits Ryan expected. Within months, the Carter family company collapsed completely, and the debt remained. The Volkov organization did not forget unpaid debts. For weeks, Emily and Ryan tried to find another way to repay what they owed. They sold the remaining company equipment, closed every financial account connected to the business, even considered leaving the city entirely. But none of those options solved the real problem. The Volkov organization had already found them, which was why Emily now stood outside the office door of Adrian Volkov. The receptionist inside the hallway opened the door silently, gesturing for Emily to enter. The office was large and quiet, designed with the kind of expensive simplicity that signaled real power. Tall windows overlooked the city skyline, while shelves along the walls held financial reports and international shipping maps. At the center of the room sat Adrian Volkov. He was younger than Emily expected, but the calm authority surrounding him made it clear why his name carried such weight inside the city's criminal world. Adrian Volkov controlled one of the most powerful underground financial networks operating in the United States. His organization managed shipping operations, private security contracts, and investment channels that moved millions of dollars through international markets. Unlike many criminal leaders, Adrian rarely appeared in public. He preferred operating quietly, strategically, which made the meeting even more intimidating. Emily walked slowly toward the chair positioned across from his desk. Adrian watched her carefully as she sat down. His expression remained calm, revealing nothing about what he was thinking. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Emily felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. She had rehearsed this conversation dozens of times in her mind. She planned to explain the situation clearly. Ryan had made mistakes, but she would find a way to repay the debt. All she needed was time. Finally, Adrian spoke. His voice carried a quiet confidence that made the entire room feel still. He explained that he understood the situation surrounding the Carter family company very well. Ryan Carter had borrowed money from a Volkov organization months earlier. The repayment deadline had passed, and now the debt remained unresolved. Emily nodded slowly. She explained that she was prepared to negotiate new terms for repayment. If Adrian allowed them several months, she could find work and begin paying the debt gradually. But Adrian did not respond immediately. Instead, he studied her with a level of attention that made her uncomfortable. Then he said something that made her entire body go cold. He asked how far along the pregnancy was. The question hung in the air like a sudden storm. Emily felt the blood drain from her face. She had hidden the pregnancy carefully. Loose clothing, careful schedules, avoiding medical visits that might appear in official records. She believed no one knew. Yet Adrian Volkov spoke about it as if the truth had been obvious from the beginning. Emily struggled to find words, but Adrian continued speaking before she could respond. His voice remained calm, almost thoughtful. He explained that secrets were difficult to hide inside a city where information moved through dozens of networks every day, especially secrets connected to people already under his organization's attention. The silence returned to the room. Emily realized the meeting had never been about negotiating debt. Adrian already knew everything he needed to know. And then he revealed something even more disturbing. The child she was trying so desperately to hide was connected to a secret far bigger than she could possibly imagine. Men like Adrian Volkov did not overlook details. Inside the criminal network stretching across several American cities, his name carried a reputation built on one simple principle. Nothing happened within his empire without his knowledge. Emily Carter realized that truth the moment Adrian Volkov asked about the child she had tried so carefully to hide. The question had not been a guess. It had been confirmation. For several seconds after he spoke, the office remained silent. Emily felt as though the walls of the room had closed in around her. Every plan she had created to keep her pregnancy secret had suddenly collapsed in a single moment. She had expected intimidation, threats, perhaps even punishment for the unpaid debt her brother owed. Instead, Adrian Volkov simply observed her. His expression remained calm, almost thoughtful, as though the secret she carried was not a problem, but a piece of information he had already anticipated. The reaction confused Emily more than anger would have, because men like Adrian Volkov were not known for patience. They were known for power. Over the past decade, Adrian had transformed the Volkov organization into one of the most influential criminal networks operating in the United States. His empire extended far beyond Chicago. Shipping companies connected to the organization operated along major trade routes from New York to Miami. Private investment groups managed funds that moved through international markets in Europe and Asia. Security contractors working for Volkov-controlled companies protected cargo shipments, corporate assets, and sometimes people who preferred not to appear in public records. But behind the appearance of legitimate business operations existed a second system, an underground network built on influence, loyalty, and careful calculation. Adrian Volkov controlled both worlds. Unlike many criminal leaders who ruled through fear alone, Adrian relied on information. He understood financial markets, global trade systems, and political connections that allowed his organization to operate quietly in places where other groups could not survive. That was why his empire had grown so quickly, and why so many powerful people avoided crossing him. Emily had heard stories about Adrian Volkov long before she ever met him. Most described him as cold, strategic, a man who rarely raised his voice because he never needed to. Now she sat across from him inside his office, realizing those stories had not exaggerated the truth. Adrian leaned back slightly in his chair, his gaze still focused on her. He explained calmly that the Carter family's financial situation had been under observation since Ryan first borrowed money from lenders connected to the Volkov network. When someone borrowed that much money, the organization always paid attention. It was part of how the system protected itself. Emily understood what he was implying. From the moment Ryan accepted the loan, their family had been watched, their business records, their financial activity, even their personal lives, which meant the secret she thought she had hidden was never truly invisible. Adrian stood and walked slowly toward the window overlooking the city. From the height of the building, Chicago stretched endlessly toward the horizon, streets filled with traffic, skyscrapers reflecting the fading afternoon light. Somewhere in that vast city, millions of people lived ordinary lives completely unaware of the power structures operating quietly behind the scenes. Adrian turned back toward Emily. His voice softened slightly when he spoke again. He explained that the Carter family's debt was still unresolved. But the situation surrounding her pregnancy had introduced something new, something that required careful consideration. Emily waited for the threat she expected to follow those words. But none came. Instead, Adrian gave a short instruction to one of the security officers waiting outside the office. Within minutes, arrangements had been made. Emily Carter would not be returning home that night. She would be taken somewhere safe. The decision happened so quickly that Emily barely had time to process it before she was escorted from the building. The black vehicle waiting outside the headquarters looked identical to the security cars used throughout the city's corporate districts. 2 additional vehicles followed closely behind as the convoy left downtown Chicago and moved toward the quieter roads leading out of the city. Emily sat silently in the back seat while the lights of the skyline slowly disappeared behind them. Her thoughts moved in circles. Adrian Volkov knew about the pregnancy, yet he had not reacted with anger. He had not demanded immediate repayment of the debt. Instead, he had taken control of the situation in a way that felt strangely protective. The convoy eventually turned onto a private road surrounded by tall trees. A set of iron gates appeared ahead, guarded by security cameras and armed personnel standing near the entrance. The gates opened automatically as the vehicles approached. Beyond them stood the Volkov estate. The property stretched across several acres of land hidden from the surrounding roads by thick forest. The mansion itself rose above the trees like a fortress designed to protect something valuable. Bright lights illuminated the long driveway, while security teams monitored every movement entering the property. Emily stepped out of the vehicle slowly. The air felt colder here, away from the crowded streets of the city. For the first time since leaving the office, she felt the full weight of her situation. She was now inside Adrian Volkov's world. Inside the mansion, the environment carried the same quiet control she had seen in Adrian's office. Wide marble hallways connected rooms filled with expensive furniture and advanced security systems. Staff members moved through the building with professional discipline, speaking quietly while performing their duties. Everything inside the estate functioned with precise order, and at the center of that order was Adrian Volkov. Emily was shown to a guest suite on the upper floor, overlooking the surrounding forest. The room was elegant, comfortable, and far from the prison she had feared. But the security presence outside the door made one thing clear. She was not free to leave. Hours passed before Adrian appeared again. When he entered the room, his expression remained calm as always. He spoke briefly, explaining that the estate would be her residence for the time being while the situation surrounding her family's debt was resolved. Emily listened carefully. She expected questions about the child. Instead, Adrian asked about something else. Her past, where she had grown up, what she remembered about her father's work before the family business collapsed. The question seemed unrelated at first, but Emily noticed the way Adrian studied her responses with careful attention, as though he was searching for something specific. After the conversation ended, Adrian left the room without explaining his reasons, but the moment the door closed behind him, he gave a quiet instruction to his security chief waiting in the hallway: begin a full investigation into Emily Carter's past. Because the deeper Adrian Volkov looked into her history, the more he began to suspect something unexpected about the child she was carrying. Emily Carter had prepared herself for punishment. From the moment Adrian Volkov revealed he knew about her pregnancy, She expected the consequences to arrive quickly in the world Adrian controlled. Secrets rarely remain hidden, and mistakes often carried severe consequences. But the days that followed brought something entirely different. Instead of punishment, Emily became the center of quiet attention inside the Volkov empire. The Volkov estate operated like a carefully controlled fortress hidden beyond the city. Every part of the property was designed to maintain security and order, from the long private road leading to the gates to the advanced surveillance systems positioned across the surrounding forest. Emily noticed the precision immediately during her first morning there. Security teams changed shifts at exact times. Patrol vehicles moved around the perimeter of the estate at regular intervals. Cameras followed activity along the property's pathways, while guards stationed near the entrance checked every vehicle approaching the gates. Nothing inside the estate happened randomly. The structure reflected Adrian Volkov's leadership. His empire functioned through control, discipline, and information. Inside the mansion, the atmosphere felt just as organized. Staff members moved quietly through wide hallways lined with marble floors and tall windows that overlooked the forest surrounding the estate. Despite the luxury of the environment, Emily sensed something else beneath the surface. Every person working inside the mansion seemed aware of their role. Everyone understood the importance of loyalty, and everyone knew that Adrian Volkov watched everything. Emily spent the first few days adjusting to the strange routine of life inside the estate. She had been given a private suite on the upper floor, overlooking the property grounds. The room contained everything she needed: comfortable furniture, a private bathroom, and access to a small balcony facing the distant tree line. Yet the presence of security guards outside the hallway reminded her constantly that this comfort existed under strict supervision. Still, the treatment she received surprised her. No one threatened her. No one treated her like a prisoner. Instead, the staff spoke politely and ensured she had everything necessary to remain comfortable. But the most unusual part of her situation was the way people reacted when they realized who she was, or more specifically, what she carried. Emily first noticed it during breakfast on her third morning at the estate. The mansion's dining hall remained quiet except for the soft sound of dishes being placed on the table by the staff. Two men entered the room while she was finishing her coffee. Both wore dark suits similar to the security officers she had seen around the property. They stopped briefly when they noticed her. Their eyes moved toward her stomach before quickly looking away. The moment lasted only seconds, but the message was clear. They knew. Later that day, Emily began meeting some of the individuals who worked closest to Adrian Volkov. One of them was Daniel Hayes. Daniel served as Adrian's chief of security and one of the most trusted members of the organization. Tall and composed, he carried himself with the calm awareness of someone accustomed to dangerous environments. His job was simple: protect the empire, protect Adrian Volkov, and now, apparently, protect Emily as well. Daniel introduced himself politely during their first conversation inside the mansion's private library. His tone remained professional, but Emily noticed the careful way he studied her, not with suspicion, with curiosity. Daniel explained the basic rules of the estate. The property was secure, but certain areas remained restricted. The lower levels of the mansion contained operational offices connected to the Volkov organization's financial network. Those spaces were not accessible to guests. Emily understood the message clearly. She was safe inside the estate, but she was not part of the organization. Yet even Daniel's calm professionalism could not hide the strange tension surrounding her presence. Over the next several days, Emily began noticing similar reactions from other members of Adrian's inner circle. Whenever someone learned about her pregnancy, their behavior changed subtly. Some became unusually quiet. Others looked at her with a mixture of curiosity and concern. A few seemed almost unsettled. The pattern made Emily increasingly uneasy. If Adrian's organization simply viewed her as the sister of someone who owed the money, their reactions would have been predictable: indifference or irritation. But this was something different, something more complicated. Emily began to suspect that Adrian's investigation into her past had uncovered information she did not yet understand. One evening, she walked to the mansion's garden courtyard, trying to clear her thoughts after a long day inside the estate. The courtyard was surrounded by stone walls covered in climbing ivy, creating a quiet space away from the main building. Soft lights illuminated the pathways, while the distant sound of forest echoed beyond the estate's outer fences. For the first time since arriving there, Emily allowed herself a moment to breathe. Her life had changed dramatically within days. The city she once called home now felt far away, and the future she had imagined for herself and her child had become uncertain. She returned to the mansion shortly before nightfall. As she walked through the long hallways near the lower-level offices, she noticed a door partially open nearby. Voices echoed faintly from inside the room. Emily slowed her steps. At first she intended to continue walking, but something in the conversation caught her attention. One of the voices belonged to Daniel Hayes. The second voice sounded older, one she did not recognize. The conversation carried a tone of quiet urgency. Daniel explained that Adrian had already begun reviewing the records connected to Emily Carter's past. The investigation had confirmed something important. The other man asked a question Emily could not hear clearly. Daniel responded in a lower voice. Yes, the timeline matched, which meant the situation was more complicated than they originally believed. The older man sounded surprised. If the records were accurate, he said, then someone inside the Volkov family had been searching for Emily Carter for years. Emily felt her heart stop for a moment. The words echoed in her mind long after the conversation inside the room fell silent, because the implication was impossible to ignore. Someone inside Adrian Volkov's own family had been searching for her long before she ever arrived at the estate. Emily Carter could not forget the words she overheard in the hallway. Someone inside the Volkov family had been searching for her for years. The realization followed her through every quiet moment inside the estate. At first, she tried to convince herself she had misunderstood the conversation between Daniel Hayes and the unidentified man. But the more she thought about it, the more the pieces began to connect. Adrian Volkov's strange reaction to her pregnancy, the careful attention from his inner circle, the investigation into her past. None of it made sense unless something about her history mattered to them, something connected to the child she was carrying. The possibility unsettled her. Emily spent the following days quietly examining the memories she had never questioned before. Growing up, her life had seemed ordinary. Her father worked long hours managing the Carter family logistics company, while her mother handled most of the household responsibilities. They were not wealthy, but they were stable. At least, that was what Emily had always believed. But now she began to remember small details that felt different when viewed from a new perspective. Her father had always been careful about the company's business partners. He rarely spoke about certain contracts he handled personally, especially those connected to international shipping routes. Sometimes he would leave the house late at night to attend meetings in parts of the city Emily did not recognize. When she asked about those trips, he would simply say the business required extra attention. Back then, she had accepted the explanation without question. Now those memories felt heavier. Because the Carter family company had operated within the same industry Adrian Volkov controlled: shipping, logistics, transportation routes connecting multiple cities. The possibility that their business had once intersected with the Volkov organization no longer seemed impossible. Emily decided to begin searching for answers. The Volkov estate contained a large private library filled with documents and digital archives connected to the organization's legitimate businesses. Most of the information related to shipping contracts, international trade routes, and financial operations across several states. Emily began reviewing older records connected to transportation companies operating in Chicago nearly 20 years earlier. She expected to find nothing. Instead, she discovered something unsettling. The Carter family company name appeared several times in archived shipping records connected to a transportation network once controlled by the Volkov organization. The contracts were old, nearly 15 years old, but they proved something important. Her father's company had worked with businesses connected to Adrian Volkov's empire long before the Carter family ever fell into debt. Emily stared at the screen, trying to process the information. If the two companies had once been connected, it meant her father had been involved in the same network that now controlled her future. The discovery raised a new question. Had her father known Adrian Volkov, or someone else inside the Volkov family? Later that evening, Emily received a message asking her to meet Adrian in his office inside the mansion. When she arrived, he was standing near the window overlooking the estate grounds. The fading sunlight cast long shadows across the room as he turned to face her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Emily sensed that Adrian already knew what she had discovered. He asked her a simple question. What did she remember about the final years of her father's life? Emily hesitated before answering. She explained that her father had seemed increasingly worried during the last year before he died. He worked longer hours and often handled certain business deals personally instead of trusting them to employees. She remembered him receiving several phone calls that made him visibly nervous. At the time, Emily believed those problems were connected to the company's financial struggles. But Adrian listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. When she finished speaking, he walked toward the desk and opened a folder containing several old documents. Inside were copies of shipping agreements signed by the Carter family company nearly 2 decades earlier. The signatures belonged to Emily's father. But the contracts were not ordinary shipping agreements. They involved secure cargo transportation across several states, shipments that required special authorization, and private security escorts. Adrian explained that those types of shipments were usually connected to sensitive financial operations, information transfers, confidential records, assets that powerful individuals preferred to move quietly. Emily felt a chill run through her chest. Her father had never mentioned anything like that, yet the documents in front of her proved he had been involved in operations connected to Volkov network long before she understood what that meant. Adrian then revealed something even more disturbing. Several years ago, an internal investigation inside the Volkov organization uncovered evidence that one of those shipments had been compromised. Sensitive information connected to several powerful individuals had nearly been exposed. At the time, the situation was resolved quietly, but the investigation had left unanswered questions about how the information had been accessed. Adrian studied Emily carefully before continuing. One of the individuals connected to that incident had disappeared shortly afterward, Emily's father. The official explanation had been an accident, but Adrian now suspected something else. Her father may have discovered information that placed him in danger, information powerful enough to threaten people who controlled major financial and political systems. Emily struggled to absorb the implications. If her father had been involved in a conflict connected to powerful individuals, it meant the Carter family's downfall had never been random. Their problems may have begun the moment her father discovered something he was never meant to see. Adrian finally spoke the thought that had been forming in Emily's mind. If her father had uncovered that secret years earlier, the people connected to it might still be searching for anything related to the incident, including the only person who could unknowingly carry evidence connected to it, Emily Carter, or the child she was carrying. The room fell silent as Emily processed the terrifying possibility. Her pregnancy was not just a personal secret anymore. It might be connected to a dangerous truth from the past, and the people who feared that truth were powerful enough to destroy anyone who threatened them. Emily finally understood the reason Adrian Volkov had been watching her so carefully. The child she carried might represent the last piece of a secret capable of threatening several powerful people. The realization that Emily Carter's pregnancy might be connected to a secret buried in the past changed everything inside the Volkov estate. What had once appeared to be a private matter between a frightened woman and a powerful mafia boss suddenly became something far more dangerous. Because secrets connected to powerful people rarely stayed hidden forever, and when those secrets resurfaced, they often started wars. Within days of Adrian Volkov's investigation into Emily's past, the atmosphere inside the estate shifted. The quiet order that once defined the property was replaced with a subtle sense of urgency that even Emily could feel. Security teams increased their patrols around the outer gates. New surveillance equipment appeared along the forested perimeter surrounding the estate. Vehicles belonging to the Volkov organization began arriving more frequently, bringing reports and intelligence from other cities connected to Adrian's empire. Something was changing. Emily first realized the seriousness of the situation when she entered the strategy room one afternoon and found Daniel Hayes reviewing several security reports spread across the large table in the center of the room. Daniel rarely showed visible emotion, but the tension in his posture revealed that something was wrong. When Adrian entered moments later, the conversation that followed confirmed Emily's growing suspicion. Several criminal organizations had begun asking questions about a woman named Emily Carter. The inquiries had started quietly, private investigators contacting former employees of the Carter family company, unknown individuals reviewing old shipping records connected to Emily's father, financial analysts searching through archived business agreements linked to the Carter logistics network. At first, the activity seemed unrelated, but the pattern became clearer as more reports arrived. Multiple organizations were looking for the same person, Emily Carter. The realization sent a cold wave of fear through her chest. Until that moment, she had believed the secret connected to her father's past was something only Adrian Volkov understood. Now it was clear that others knew about it as well. Adrian remained calm as Daniel finished explaining the situation, but Emily noticed the way his expression sharpened as he reviewed the intelligence reports. Men like Adrian Volkov built their empires by anticipating threats long before they appeared. And now he could see the pattern forming. The secret connected to Emily's father had not disappeared when he died. It had remained hidden within a network of powerful people who once depended on it. Now that the possibility of its return existed, those people were beginning to react. The war had not started yet, but it was coming. Adrian began issuing instructions immediately. Additional security teams were assigned to this state. Several trusted members of the Volkov organization were sent to investigate the individuals searching for Emily. And most importantly, Adrian ordered a deeper examination of the Carter family's historical business records. Because if rival organizations were searching for Emily Carter now, it meant someone had uncovered new information connected to her father's past. Emily remained inside the strategy room as the investigation unfolded. At first, she felt like an outsider observing a dangerous world she barely understood. But the more she listened to the discussion surrounding her father's history, the more she realized she could help. The Carter family company records were familiar to her in ways the Volkov analysts could not fully understand. Emily began reviewing archived shipping documents and financial agreements connected to the company's final years. One detail eventually caught her attention. Several shipments handled by the Carter company shortly before her father's death had followed unusual routes. Instead of the normal transportation patterns between regional warehouses, those shipments had traveled through ports connected to international financial centers. London, Zurich, Singapore. The pattern suggested something important. Those shipments had not been transporting ordinary cargo. They had been carrying something far more sensitive. Encrypted financial data. Information connected to individuals who could not risk exposing their activities publicly. Emily presented her findings to Adrian and Daniel late one evening. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. If her father had been transporting sensitive information through his logistics network, it meant he had unknowingly become part of a hidden system used by powerful figures to move their secrets safely. And if he discovered what those shipments contained, he may have tried to expose the system, which would explain why he died shortly afterward. But another possibility emerged as the investigation continued. Someone inside the hidden network may have realized that Emily Carter still existed, and that she might unknowingly hold the final piece of evidence connected to her father's discovery. The unborn child she carried might represent a link to information those people could not afford to lose. The realization changed the way Adrian viewed the situation entirely. Emily was no longer simply a woman under his protection. She had become the center of a conflict between powerful organizations desperate to control the same secret, and Adrian Volkov was now standing between them. The tension inside the estate continued to grow over the following days. Additional intelligence reports revealed that at least 2 rival criminal factions had begun sending operatives into Chicago. Their objective was simple: find Emily Carter. The threat forced Adrian to reconsider the structure of his own organization, because the more he studied the situation, the more he realized something troubling. The rival factions searching for Emily had learned about her existence far too quickly, which meant the information had likely come from someone with access to the Volkov network itself. Someone inside his own organization. The possibility of betrayal unsettled Adrian more than any external threat. His empire had survived for years because loyalty within the organization remained strong. But now small signs of tension were beginning to appear. Several senior members of the Volkov network started asking questions about why so many resources were being used to protect Emily Carter. Others seemed uneasy about the attention her presence was attracting from rival groups. The conflict surrounding her had begun creating fractures inside the empire. Emily sensed a shift as well. The careful balance that once defined the estate had changed. The quiet confidence of Adrian's organization was now shadowed by uncertainty. And the deeper the investigation went, the clearer one disturbing possibility became. The secret surrounding her father's past had not only attracted enemies from outside the Volkov Empire, it had also awakened something dangerous much closer to home. Because the latest intelligence report revealed a detail Adrian could not ignore. One of the rival groups searching for Emily had received information from someone connected to the Volkov family itself, which meant the conspiracy threatening the Empire might not be coming from strangers at all. It might be coming from someone inside Adrian Volkov's own family. The threat surrounding Emily Carter was no longer hidden. What began as a quiet investigation into her father's past had grown into something far more dangerous. Rival criminal factions were now searching for her across multiple cities, and the possibility of betrayal inside the Volkov organization had created tension throughout the empire. Yet in the middle of that growing storm, one unexpected truth became clear. The Mafia boss Emily had feared the most might be the only person capable of protecting her and the child she carried. Adrian Volkov responded to the rising danger with the same calm strategy that had built his empire. The first sign of change appeared in the way security around Emily increased almost overnight. Guards now accompanied her whenever she moved through the estate grounds. Surveillance teams monitored every road leading to property, and additional vehicles belonging to the Volkov organization began patrolling the surrounding forest. But Adrian's protection extended beyond security. He made a decision that surprised many inside his organization. Emily Carter would no longer remain hidden quietly inside the mansion as an outsider. Instead, Adrian allowed her limited access to certain areas of the estate normally reserved for trusted members of his network. The change was subtle, but its meaning was clear. Emily was no longer just someone under protection. She had become part of the situation Adrian needed to solve. At first, Emily found the adjustment difficult. For weeks she had viewed Adrian Volkov as the man who controlled her fate. The debt her brother owed had placed her inside a world she never wanted to enter, and the secret surrounding her pregnancy had only deepened her fear. But as the investigation continued, she began to see something different in Adrian. His decisions were never reckless. Every move he made carried careful reasoning behind it. One afternoon, he invited Emily into the estate strategy room, while Daniel Hayes reviewed intelligence reports connected to the rival factions searching for her. The room itself reflected the scale of the Volkov Empire. Large digital displays showed maps of international shipping routes and financial networks connecting several cities across the United States. Files filled with information about corporate investments, cargo operations, and private security contracts covered the central table. This was the real heart of Adrian's power, the place where decisions affecting entire criminal networks were made. Adrian explained that the investigation into her father's past had revealed more connections than he originally expected. Several powerful individuals had once used the Carter family logistics company to move sensitive shipments across international routes. At the time, those shipments appeared legitimate, but hidden within them were encrypted financial records belonging to influential figures who preferred their business remain invisible. Politicians, corporate leaders, and several high-ranking members of criminal organizations operating across Europe and the United States. Emily listened carefully as Adrian described the system. The shipping network her father unknowingly worked within had functioned as a secure transportation channel for information too dangerous to transmit electronically. If someone intercepted those shipments and exposed their contents, the consequences could destroy reputations, collapse financial empires, and reveal criminal alliances that had existed for decades. Emily's father had likely discovered that truth shortly before his death, and now the same secret had returned. As the conversation continued, something inside Emily shifted. For the first time since entering the Volkov estate, She felt less like a victim of circumstances and more like someone capable of helping uncover the truth. Her knowledge of the Carter family company records allowed her to recognize patterns inside the shipping logs Adrian's analysts had struggled to understand. She pointed out a series of shipments handled during the final months before her father died. Those shipments followed routes connected to financial centers known for protecting private banking accounts. The pattern suggested that someone had been moving sensitive information between powerful individuals across multiple countries. Daniel Hayes confirmed that her observation matched several intelligence reports collected from the Volkov network. The system her father discovered had been larger than anyone originally believed, and the people connected to it were now trying to prevent the truth from emerging again. Emily spent the following days working closely with Adrian's team, examining archived financial documents connected to the old shipping network. Most of the files appeared routine: cargo manifests, contract agreements, shipping insurance reports. But buried deep within the records, Emily eventually noticed something unusual. One document contained a list of secured shipments transported to the Carter Company nearly 18 years earlier. The file appeared ordinary at first, until Emily noticed a single name listed under the authorization signature for one of those shipments. The name belonged to someone connected to the Volkov family itself: Viktor Volkov, Adrian's father. The discovery stunned everyone in the room. Viktor Volkov had once controlled the empire Adrian now led before retiring from public operations several years earlier. His involvement in the shipping records meant the Volkov organization had been connected to the secret financial network long before Emily's father discovered it. But the document revealed something even more disturbing. Attached to the shipment authorization was a confidential file labeled with a code connected to a specific child registry record. Emily stared at the file, her hands beginning to tremble slightly as she opened it. The document contained medical and legal information recorded shortly after her birth, and at the center of that file was a note written in encrypted shorthand. The note confirmed something that made the room fall silent. The child connected to the Carter family shipment record had been marked as a protected asset within the hidden financial network. Emily Carter, which meant the unborn child she carried was not just connected to the secret surrounding her father's death. The child had been connected to that system from the very beginning. The conspiracy threatening the Volkov Empire had not begun with Emily Carter. It had begun years earlier, long before she ever walked to the gates of Adrian Volkov's estate. The discovery that Emily herself had once been listed as a protected asset inside a secret financial network forced Adrian to re-examine everything he believed about the hidden system connected to her father's past. The room inside the estate strategy center remained silent as the encrypted document continued glowing on the screen. Viktor Volkov's name stood clearly on the authorization record. For several seconds, Adrian did not speak. His father had built the Volkov Empire decades earlier through careful alliances with powerful figures across Europe and the United States. When Adrian eventually took control of the organization, Viktor stepped away from daily operations, leaving the empire in his son's hands. But this document proved something Adrian had never suspected. His father had once been directly involved with the same hidden network connected to Emily Carter. Adrian turned his attention toward Daniel Hayes, who had already begun analyzing the deeper records linked to the encrypted file. The results appeared quickly. The shipment authorized by Viktor Volkov had been part of a highly restricted operation that moved confidential financial records between several powerful individuals across multiple countries. The system had been designed to protect secrets, corporate corruption, political bribery, hidden criminal partnerships between organizations that officially appeared unrelated. Anyone who controlled that network possessed leverage capable of influencing governments and financial markets. But the system also contained a dangerous weakness. The encrypted records required a specific verification code connected to a biological identity marker, a bloodline key. That key had been assigned to one individual, Emily Carter. The realization settled across the room like a storm. Emily herself had unknowingly been part of the network security design since birth. Her father had not simply transported secret shipments. He had been protecting a living key to the system. And now Emily carried a child connected to that same lineage, which meant the unborn child represented the next generation of access to the hidden archive. The significance of that truth explained everything. Why rival criminal organizations had suddenly begun searching for her. Why Adrian's investigation had triggered such immediate reactions across multiple underground networks. And why the tension inside the Volkov Empire had begun growing over the past several days. Because whoever controlled Emily Carter would control the system her father had helped protect. The discovery also revealed something even more disturbing. Someone inside the Volkov organization had recently attempted to access the encrypted archive without Adrian's authorization. Daniel located the attempted access inside the system logs. The code used during the attempt belonged to a high-ranking member of the Volkov family itself. The name appeared clearly in the records. Nikolai Volkov, Adrian's uncle. Unlike Victor, who had stepped away from leadership years earlier, Nikolai remained quietly connected to several financial operations tied to the Volkov network. He had always maintained a reputation as a strategist who preferred working behind the scenes. Adrian trusted him. Until now, the attempted access to the encrypted archive had occurred only 2 weeks earlier. Around the same time rival factions began searching for Emily Carter. The timing was impossible to ignore, which meant the information about Emily's existence had likely come from someone inside Adrian's own family. The betrayal was not just personal, it was strategic. Nikolai Volkov had spent years studying the hidden financial system created by powerful elites across multiple continents. He understood that controlling the archive meant controlling secrets valuable enough to reshape entire criminal empires. But the system required one final element to function: Emily Carter, and now her child. Before Adrian could fully respond to the discovery, alarms suddenly activated across the estate security network. Daniel immediately turned toward the surveillance screens lining the strategy room wall. Several vehicles had appeared along the private road leading toward the estate gates. Thermal imaging cameras revealed armed men moving through the forest surrounding the property. Rival factions had arrived, and they were not waiting for permission to enter. Within seconds, the estate's defensive systems activated automatically. Security teams moved into position along the outer perimeter, while reinforced gates sealed the main entrance road. The peaceful silence that once surrounded the Volkov estate disappeared completely. The war had finally begun. Adrian remained calm despite the sudden chaos. He gave short, precise instructions to Daniel and the security teams monitoring the perimeter. Protect Emily Carter. Secure the archive servers. Prepare defensive response teams. The rival factions outside the estate clearly believed they could seize the key to the encrypted network by force. But Adrian Volkov had not built his empire by underestimating his enemies. Emily watched the situation unfold from the strategy room, the reality of the conflict becoming impossible to ignore. Everything surrounding her life had changed. Her father's past, the secret system connected to her birth, the child she carried. All of it had now become the center of a conflict between powerful criminal organizations. Yet, one truth stood above everything else. The man responsible for revealing her existence to those enemies had not arrived with the attackers. He had been planning something far more calculated. Adrian already understood that, because Nikolai Volkov was not the type of strategist who relied on chaos. He preferred control, which meant the attack outside the estate gates was only a distraction. The real confrontation had not yet begun. Adrian slowly closed the encrypted file containing the records of Emily's connection to the hidden archive. His voice remained calm when he finally spoke. The war surrounding the secret had started long before Emily Carter ever entered the Volkov Empire. But now the man who created that war was ready to reveal himself. Emily Carter had entered Adrian Volkov's world, trying to hide the most vulnerable truth of her life. Now that same truth had become the center of a war powerful enough to shake the foundation of the Volkov Empire. Outside the estate, the sound of engines and distant gunfire echoed through the surrounding forest. The rival factions that had spent weeks searching for Emily Carter had finally made their move, believing they could take control of the secret network by force. But Adrian Volkov understood something they did not. This conflict was never only about power. It was about control of information capable of destroying the reputations of powerful people across multiple continents. And the only person capable of unlocking that information now stood inside his strategy room: Emily Carter. The surveillance screens across the wall displayed the chaotic movements of vehicles attempting to breach the outer gates of the estate. Security teams were already responding, forcing several of the attackers to retreat into the forest. But Adrian knew the attack itself was not the true objective. The real threat was still coming, because the man responsible for exposing Emily's existence had not appeared yet. Nikolai Volkov. Adrian's uncle had spent years building influence inside the hidden financial network connected to Emily's birth. Unlike the rival factions outside the gates, Nikolai understood that brute force would never guarantee control of the encrypted archive. The system required something far more specific: Emily's biological verification, and now the unborn child she carried. The room remained tense as Daniel Hayes continued monitoring security reports coming from the state perimeter. The attackers were slowing down, almost as if they had already accomplished their purpose. Adrian studied the screens carefully before finally understanding the strategy behind the assault. The attack had never been meant to capture Emily. It had been meant to force Adrian to activate the encrypted archive system himself, because the moment the system became active, the hidden network would reveal its final access point, a signal Nikolai Volkov could track. Almost as if anticipating Adrian's realization, one of the secure communication channels inside the strategy room suddenly activated. The voice that followed carried calm confidence. Nikolai Volkov. He explained the situation with unsettling clarity. For decades, a hidden financial network had protected secrets belonging to some of the most powerful individuals in the world. Those secrets were worth more than money. They represented leverage over entire governments, corporations, and criminal organizations. But the system had one fatal flaw. It required a living verification key. Emily Carter. Nikolai had spent years waiting for the moment the system would reactivate. When Emily's pregnancy appeared inside certain medical records connected to the Carter family history, he realized the opportunity had finally arrived. The unborn child represented the continuation of the verification bloodline, which meant the network could be permanently controlled by whoever possessed both Emily and the archive. Nikolai calmly explained his final proposal. If Adrian surrendered Emily Carter and the encrypted system access, the attack outside the state would end immediately. The rival factions would withdraw, and the Volkov Empire would remain untouched. The silence that followed the offer lasted several seconds. Daniel glanced toward Adrian, waiting for instructions. But Adrian did not respond immediately. His gaze moved toward Emily. The woman who had once entered his office as nothing more than the sister of a debtor now stood at the center of a conflict capable of reshaping the criminal world. And the decision about how that conflict ended belonged to her as much as it belonged to him. Emily understood the reality of the situation clearly. For weeks, she had been trying to understand the secrets surrounding her father's past. Now she finally saw the full truth. The hidden financial archive had been designed to protect the powerful by ensuring their secrets could never be exposed. But her father had discovered something dangerous about that system. If the archive's contents were released publicly, the leverage controlling those powerful figures would disappear. The entire network of corruption would collapse. Emily slowly stepped toward the console connected to the encrypted archive. Daniel looked uncertain for a moment, but Adrian raised a hand slightly. He understood what she intended to do. The system activated as Emily entered the final verification code connected to her identity. The archive responded immediately. Instead of granting exclusive control to a single user, the system triggered a secondary protocol hidden inside its design, a protocol her father had secretly created before his death. The archive began transmitting its encrypted contents to dozens of independent financial regulators and investigative agencies across multiple countries. Within seconds, the hidden secrets of powerful elites started leaving the network. Political corruption records, corporate bribery agreements, financial transfers linking criminal organizations to legitimate institutions. The system that had protected powerful secrets for decades was collapsing. Outside the estate, the rival factions monitoring the encrypted network realized what had happened. Vehicles began retreating quickly from the forest surrounding the property. The war had ended before it could fully begin, because the prize they had been fighting for no longer existed. Inside the strategy room, the communication channel connected to Nikolai Volkov remained silent. The mastermind who had orchestrated the entire conspiracy had just lost the system he spent years trying to control. Days later, the consequences of Emily's decision began spreading across the world. Several influential figures connected to the hidden network disappeared from public view. Financial institutions launched investigations into suspicious transactions tied to international corruption. Criminal alliances that once relied on the network's protection began collapsing under the weight of exposed secrets. The Volkov empire survived the chaos, but it changed. Adrian Volkov had spent years building his power through careful control of information and alliances. Now he understood something different. Power could also come from releasing the truth. Emily Carter stood quietly on the balcony overlooking the estate grounds weeks later. The forest surrounding the property looked peaceful again, as though the war that nearly erupted there had never happened. But Emily knew her life had changed forever. The frightened woman who once tried to hide her pregnancy had become someone capable of influencing events far larger than herself. Adrian stepped beside her quietly. Neither of them spoke for several moments. He understood something that had taken weeks to fully accept. The child Emily once tried to hide had reshaped the future of his empire. And as Emily prepared to leave the world she had been forced into, Adrian Volkov realized the woman who tried to hide her secret had become the most important person in his life.